Okay. Welcome to the Playdate. I'm Frances Fishman, your host, and here I have Dr. Sharon Arbel, a clinical psychologist who specializes in children and development and who's going to talk to us all about her amazing practice, give us some tips, and talk about the incredible, very specialized programs that she has. And we'll share a little bit of a sneak peek about something we're working on together. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited you're here. Why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, myself is that, first of all, I'm a mother of three amazing boys who keep me on my toes at all times and give me the best experience and, knowledge for like what I do for a living. I'm also a clinical psychologist and I have a group practice that I run. I train interns and clinicians in doing this work. We do testing, we do therapy, we have lots of different programs going on there. And recently I have come to create some resources. I'm in a stage in my life where I really want to disseminate the knowledge that I've accrued over the last 20 years. So that is what I've gone for. I've gone for just developing different programs and disseminating that knowledge to families with as far as reach as I can.
That's beautiful. I think, when we start in our fields, it's always about the clients and the kids. And then I think you see a bigger picture as you continue in the field, or at least I did. And I feel like you did too, which is where these resources come from. Because if you want to make a greater impact, you have to support the people supporting the children or the clients. And so doing things like offering training or providing education to families or other professionals allows for a glimpse into the way that I see things or the way that you see things, which allows us to have a deeper look into what's going on and how we can support. And I feel like it's a really cool thing. I talk about how when we're working with kids, the ripple effect is infinite. It far surpasses the moment in what we're doing. And when we're able to impact an entire system, to support a whole family, to support a classroom or an entire school, the impact is like that ripple effect goes so far beyond our imagination. And I think it's a beautiful legacy to leave. And it's also a really impactful way to use your knowledge that you've acquired.
Absolutely. I was always a systems thinker. So in graduate school, this was my track. This is how I was trained as a systems thinker. And so it's very natural for me to think this way. But I think working in the field really gave me the understanding that if I want to impact these kids, I have to reach farther. I have to work with the parents. I have to work with the educators. I have to work with the people who are supporting them. Because at the end of the day, once I'm done with my session with them or my time with them, I need their environment to support that change.
100%. I agree totally. And I think, sometimes we'll get clients who the families will provide us with the children in the hopes that we're going to in some way help that child, but it doesn't work as a drop off. It doesn't work that way because change will happen within our session or within our dynamic, but it won't necessarily generalize to the rest of their life if nobody else is learning skills too.
Absolutely.
So I think one of the most beautiful things we can give is a different way of understanding and seeing. Like, I have this deep-rooted memory of being at a school and sitting in a meeting with administration and teachers and discussing one of my clients and talking about some foundational information that I knew about my client and about autism and the way that his brain processed information. And the entire room went, oh. And then it hit me. I have been working in this field. This is something I deeply understand and can see, but not everyone has the same training or insight. Not to their own fault, because that's not what they were taught. It's not something that they were exposed to.
Right.
And to be able to provide them with that totally changed their experience of this child and how they approached this child, interacted with this child, supported this child for the rest of his education, just with that different lens. And it really made me realize that when we can see through a different lens, like you put on, rose-colored glasses, or you put on, a different shade, you see the world differently.
Yes.
And to be able to provide that, I think, is the first step to seeing change. And I'm curious what your experience has been in providing information like that and creating change like that, because you don't do it just within outer systems. You also do it within your own system, because you train clinical psychologists, you oversee them.
Right.
So I'm curious what your experience is like in that.
So every family who calls in gets that same kind of intro from me. I say, we will be asking for your time. Even if the person coming in to get the help is your child, we have to be asking for your time. We need you involved. We need you to know what we're doing. We need you to support that at home. We need to know what you're doing so that we can make some tweaks. And here's where I love being a mom, because I can say judgment free, seriously, no judgment. We make mistakes all the time. And when you have another empathic, warm person who's also a mom from the outside say, hey, try this instead of that.
Yeah.
Let's tweak this. Let's change the communication. Let's rewire the way we handle these types of situations. We all have our blind spots and we're all making mistakes. And so I think that in this way, I've been super clear from the beginning about the fact that this change is going to be a systemic change, and this process is going to be a process for the whole system. The first session that a family comes to see me, we don't talk about the quote identified patient. There's no discussion of the problematic child and why the family is bringing them in for therapy and how awful they are at home and how many tantrums they have. We have zero discussion about that. The entire session is focused on family strengths and family areas of deficit. What's challenging for you? Because we all have things that are challenging for us in every single family. We all have areas of growth. And that you get to see the kids relax. We're not in trouble. We're not being dragged in for therapy. The whole family is here for a process of change.
Yeah.
And, I kind of stand behind what I said up front. This is a family process. The second session is only for the parents. So right away, the kids see this is not just my process.
Right.
Everyone's involved. Everyone's undergoing change. Everyone's going to kind of improve so that this family works better. And we speak in those family terms. We speak in those systems terms. And it makes all the difference for those kids. You really see their bodies relax.
That is so beautiful. I love that. It makes me think about how my husband calls our family a team. And when we're all leaving the house at the same time, he'll be like, team out. We all go. But it's true when he talks to the kids about how they're a team and how when one of them is having a hard time, we're all going to work on it together. This isn't like a you issue. This is we.
Yes.
We are a team. We are a system. And each of us impacts the other.
Absolutely. The system impacts every single individual, and every single individual impacts the system back. And we look at the system as its own entity that has its own characteristics and its own rules and its own kind of energy, its own vibe. And it is really amazing. I think one of the areas that's the easiest to witness this in a family is that when a couple is struggling with their marriage, it will impact the children right away.
For sure.
And I do a lot of couples work and parenting work. That's really my area of expertise. And it's just so clear how these kids, the whole family stabilizes once the hub of the wheel stabilizes, once that marriage stabilizes. And even if it's not a marriage, right? Even if it's a single parent household, once that what we call executive subsystem stabilizes, everybody else can stabilize.
I totally agree. I actually have a beautiful story before I go to my next question, because something you spoke about really is dear to my heart. But I have a beautiful story about a client who didn't have very much verbal language. And the mom told me, because we spoke a lot about his intuition and that he has gifts that she doesn't fully understand. And I found that a lot with my clients. Very gifted, very intuitive, like magical, so beautiful. And she told me this story about how her and her husband had argued outside of the house. The child didn't know. They had a night where they didn't speak to each other. And the next morning, the child looked at his parents, took his mom's hand, took his dad's hand, dragged them together, sat them on a bench and looked at them holding hands and just looked.
Right.
And the mom just started crying. She was like, oh my God. He had no idea. This isn't information that he was told. It wasn't something he overheard or could have overheard. He was not there, but it was something he could feel.
Absolutely. Kids pick up on so much more than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
They are incredibly intuitive, and it's nothing that needs to be said. It's nothing that needs to be stated. You know, they just pick up on these things. We communicate on so many levels. And so most people are aware of the verbal level of communication and the nonverbal.
Yeah.
Our heart actually carries an electromagnetic signal that is felt throughout the home.
Yeah.
And so we communicate on a level that none of us can really control or think we can control. We actually can control it, but we communicate on that level too.
Yeah.
So kids pick up on that. Kids pick up on that, you know, kind of very visceral, very like physiological tension.
Yeah, they can feel it.
Yes.
And they can feel where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And they may not understand it. Like they may have no idea what the actual problem is or what their feeling is. And so sometimes we see children acting out. In this particular scenario, it seemed that he was very in tune with exactly what was going on. But sometimes, you know, like I always say, my kids are my mirror. When I'm off, they're definitely off.
Of course.
And then I'm like, God, I can't keep it together. You need to keep it together so I don't lose it. But that's how it works. Right. They're picking up on my energy.
And then there's that snowball. So then they begin to work out their anxiety, maybe behaviorally, right? They're acting out. It's making you more stressed. It's adding to your already present level of tension.
Yep.
And there's the snowball. And that's why we have to work with the system.
Yep.
That's why I always say this is not a drop-off therapy. This is the process for the entire family. And you have to sign up for that if you're going to work with the clinicians in my practice.
I'm totally with you. There's something else you mentioned that I feel deeply in my core. And I can imagine that most people who work within our fields or in any helping field of children or parents or family systems feel. And that's this feeling of, I know better. I train, I coach, I educated myself, and yet I still make the mistakes. And I know I'm going to screw up my kids, hopefully not so bad, but it's inevitable that I'm going to make mistakes. And when I go in and I do a parent seminar or coaching, or if I'm doing a parent talk, I always talk about how I'm not the god of behavior just because of my title. I don't know the answer to everything. And I make the same mistakes you do. I make the same mistakes. And I know that's eaten me alive in my own head, like destroyed me, gone to bed crying that I'm the worst mom ever because I know better.
You should know better. Isn't that the hardest? It's hard for me too. And every professional who is in our field struggles with this.
Yeah.
I mean, there's extra stringent expectations and extra shame when we mess up.
Yes.
That's a really hard part of doing what we do, is that I think we hold ourselves to these unrealistic expectations sometimes.
Yeah.
But it also helps me to be superhuman with the families, the schools, the educators that I'm working with. And when I say I get it, I'm like,
You really mean it.
I really mean it.
Yeah.
I get the challenge. And so, I have this wealth of knowledge, and let me give it to you and let me tell you what the pitfalls are and, what the obstacles, what the hurdles are 2 seconds before you're going to meet them. And let's figure out a plan for how you're going to maybe avoid them or respond once you encounter them. But when I'm sitting with a system and I say, I get it, I really get it on every level. And I think it makes me really authentic and warm when I'm showing up. And it just, it removes me from that place of like, the know all expert. I don't want to be there. I don't like it. We are all, we're all trying to figure it out.
Absolutely the same. I feel I never want anyone to perceive me the way I've seen some of my superiors be perceived.
Yeah.
Because, and not in a bad way, but because I know families looked at them as like, I need to run every single thing I ever do by you because you know so much more than me. And I think one of the most powerful tools that I talk about with parents is trusting their own intuition. And it's something I've worked on a lot in my own life, is finding my own voice, trusting my own intuition, and not just, the research, or not just, but like what works for my child? What does my child need? What do I need? What does my home and my family need? And I feel like a parent's intuition, there's really nothing like it, because the way you deeply know and understand and feel your child. Like when we build relationships with clients, we really get to know them. But you can't compare to the way a mom, when they hear their child cry, or when they see the tension in their jaw, or something small, or like that one look, and you're like, oh,
I know what that means.
Yes. Yes. I think that that's a really beautiful gift to remind parents that they have, is that they have their own intuition. But then there's always, the fear of mistaking your intuition with your fear, or with what you have been taught, or or the 15 books that you read that all said conflicting things, or, now I don't know what I think or what I know. I don't know what I know anymore. And I think that's an interesting part of our world today, is how much access to information. And so, if I want to jump from this to something very interesting that I think we could both really speak to, is there's so much information on, let's say, ABA, right? And our audience doesn't know, but you have a lot of experience in ABA, actually, which I'll let you speak about in a moment. But if you think about what the world knows about ABA, and how, for instance, the Playbase implements ABA, or the way you have implemented ABA, doesn't really align with what some of the, information is out there. And so then it becomes confusing, all this different information, and what is the right thing for my child and what is not. And so what I think is really important is to be able to sit with yourself. And one of my biggest pieces of advice is, let's say a family is coming from a different company to me, and they're not sure because this company does things differently. I say to them, I don't want you to come to me and then jump from company to company. I want you to sit with yourself and what feels right for you and your family. What feels right for your child? If something doesn't feel right, it's probably not. Whether that be the Playbase, or me, or another company, or what food to put on the table, or whatever. If it doesn't feel right in your gut, it's probably not. And if it feels good, that feels safe. That feels like I can breathe. That's a good indication that's probably the right choice to make. And it's hard to live your life always making decisions that way. But I'm going to flip this to the conversation about ABA because I found it beyond fascinating that when I met you, which I had the honor of meeting you because your son and my daughter built a beautiful friendship.
The best.
And begged for play dates. And we ended up having, I mean, this is a play date, but we ended up having a mom and child play date where when you told me you worked in ABA before, it blew my mind. I don't know very many clinical psychologists who started in ABA. Yeah. I actually wanted to be one. So when you said that, I was like, oh my God, you literally lived out my dream. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you experienced ABA as well.
I started in ABA. I had no idea it was called ABA. It was that time in history.
Same, actually.
I was 19 years old. I was hired off of, listen to this, Craigslist.
Oh, I was hired off of Kijiji.
Oh,
I don't know if they had Kijiji in the States.
No, but I've heard of it.
It's a Canadian one, I think.
So I was hired on Craigslist because I'd always worked with kids and, summer camps, after school activities, tutoring, babysitting, etc. So I'm 19 and I barely know what autism is. I certainly don't know what ABA is. And I'm hired into this company and it's a sink or swim type of training. You know, that methodology,
Yep.
Like go, this is the address, go. And I cried when I came home on day 1 and on day 2 and on day 3, 4, 5. I don't know when I stopped, but I was hooked. It was so meaningful to me. It was like the most meaningful work I could have been doing at that stage in my life.
Same.
And I saw day to day the growth and the progress. It was so rewarding. It was just, I couldn't walk away. It was hard. I wasn't given the training that we now give new clinicians in ABA. I wasn't given that training and it was hard. It was, it was really like figure it out. And I figured it out. And I ended up working in the field for 15 years. I worked for several different agencies and I kind of climbed the ladder and I was a clinical director of an ABA agency in my last position. And I was training all the new clinicians and I was overseeing all the clinical work and I was writing all the assessments and all the goals and I was visiting all the kids and making sure all the work was being done, to the highest standard. But the path from that first day when I was 19 to that time of being a clinical director was like really confusing. And the whole field was evolving at that time. Mm-hmm. So everyone was figuring it out. But I was really blessed to have some very good supervisors and some very good people along the way who were guiding me to what you now call compassionate ABA. That was not a thing back then.
Nope.
And I was learning that ABA was like, there's a love or hate relationship with ABA. And ABA was really getting like this bad reputation in the field. And the way that I was practicing ABA, that we were practicing, and at the agency I was at, it was so systems informed. It was so developmentally appropriate. It was so nervous system informed, Mm-hmm. But these terms didn't exist because everyone was just trying to figure it out. So we were just lucky to have a good combination of, very kind of compassionate, experienced clinicians who were figuring it out together. And so it was a bit of like a mastermind and, kind of melting pot of ideas. And when I met you and you said you practice compassionate ABA, I was like, oh, that's what it's called.
I actually didn't know that it was a coined term. It is now. And when I listen to those who define it and do the CEUs defining it, I'm like, you're still missing so much. They're still missing. They don't talk about the nervous system in compassionate ABA terms.
Right.
They don't.
Right.
And it's mind-blowing to me that it is an ignored human feature that literally determines what we do.
Yeah.
They don't talk about executive dysfunction. They don't talk about the things that, how you can feel somebody else's energy.
And this is where attachment fails in general. Like the field of attachment, I think, is missing these key elements.
Yeah.
And so compassionate ABA is really built on things like attachment theory.
Yes.
And it's beautiful and it's so needed in the field of ABA, but it's not all the missing links. And that's what you're speaking to.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I talk about how we look at the attachment lens, we look at the trauma lens, we look at the nervous system lens, we look at the neurodiversity or the neurological makeup lens, we look at the diagnosis or lack of diagnosis. We don't just look at a child as ABC data sheets, sit at a table, I'm going to teach you. We look at a child in a holistic way. And I think that there should be no other way to look at a person, let alone a child you're subjecting to sitting at a table, running 10 trials until they master your criteria at your table, and then expect them to go out in the real world and behave in a neurotypical quote unquote way,
right?
Which is not what we're trying to do anyways. I think this lens of trying to fix or alter in some way is also harmful, but rather understanding,
right?
Providing tools, being compassionate, seeing the world through their eyes to the best of our ability. I have always wished to spend one day inside my client's mind just to experience it differently. Because the way I view the world is different than the way you view the world, or than any of my children or anyone else that I have ever worked with. I don't know if you've ever watched the musical Matilda. My daughter was in it a few years ago at summer camp. And there's a song that Matilda sings, and it made me cry. It was so beautiful. And in the song, she says, "How do I know that the color red that I see is the same red that you see? And how do I know what red really is?" And the way, and it was like, yes, this is a question I've thought in my own mind. How do I know that the way I see the world is the way you really see the world? And I see all these beautiful things, but do you see it the same way?
Right.
And not only see, because it's how you experience the whole world. And it's to ignore that part of us is such a disservice.
Right. And so I understand why ABA has gotten a bad rep.
Yeah.
I really do, because most of the time it is practiced pretty rigidly without concern for all of these other elements of, human functioning.
Yeah.
So I understand why it's gotten a bad rep, but I think, really it's about finding the providers that are doing it right, because it's an incredibly effective treatment. Incredibly, life.
Totally agree.
Completely life-changing.
And for everyone who hasn't learned this part yet, to giving them the tools.
Yes.
And training them and letting them see behavior through a different lens and letting them understand. Because I believe strongly that nobody goes into a helping field to do harm. Like, you just don't.
Yeah, no, it's too hard emotionally and, on many other levels to go into it with the wrong intention. Your heart really has to be there.
Yeah. And so everyone is doing it from the depths of their soul to create positive change, to support, to help, to guide, and then often it's to give someone something you didn't get,
Yes.
to heal a part of yourself in some way. And so to give others the tools to be able to do that in a more compassionate, in a more effective, in a more loving way.
Yes.
I think everyone, like anytime I speak to, RBTs here, they're like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. I didn't know I could do that." Yeah, you can. You should. And you can. Speaking of educating, we have a really cool project that we're working on together. And I'm personally very excited because, as I mentioned earlier, and as you have mentioned many times, impacting systems is a passion for both of us. I have always wanted to be planted in a school so that children had access to me. Then I realized I didn't want just children to have access to me. I wanted teachers to have access to me. And I did that and I loved it so much. And then I was like, okay, but now I need to be in every school. And how do I do that?
Duplicate myself.
Yeah, I'm just going to go clone myself.
Mm-hmm.
This is a way that we've been able to share information in a deeply meaningful, impactful way with our new program called Empowering Educators.
I am so excited about this project, let me tell you. I'm shocked and so thrilled with how quickly it's coming together.
Yeah. I mean, I have family, I have friends, I've built relationships with educators and with administrators over the years. And it's just a missing piece is this type of information. It's just not taught in school. And you encounter it every single day, all day as an educator because you're working with a group of children. And in some cases, you're working with multiple groups of children, teaching all different children. Sometimes you're teaching 5 different classes or 10 or the entire grade. If you're like a PE teacher or, an art teacher, you might be teaching every single student in a grade, which means you can't use one way of teaching for your entire educational career. In fact, you may not even be able to use one way of teaching or looking at things in a day or in a class in an hour. And what we have created, I think, is, I may be biased, but I think it's magic.
I do too. And on the one hand, because that information is just not available these days. It's not available to teachers in training.
Yeah.
It's not available in professional development. So on the one hand, because the information is lacking, and on the other hand, because the landscape has really changed. The landscape of what it means to be an educator, the landscape of the components of education and the different moving parts throughout the day and the different things that teachers are tasked with encountering, considering, intervening with. It's not just, the reading, writing, arithmetic. It's not.
So they're also competing with technology,
right,
and the instant gratification of technology. They're competing with lots of different elements which have impacted, I think, deeply impacted students today.
Yes.
Not just in their grades, but in their ability to attend, in their motivation to engage,
yes,
in their responses to teachers. And so teachers are climbing an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Especially as their students get older, but in all students today,
yes,
it's a different, and post-COVID, and there are so many elements which have totally changed our world.
Yeah.
And has totally changed what the classroom looks like and feels like and what that means to be a teacher today.
Yes.
It's really hard to be a teacher today.
It is. It's really hard to be a teacher today. And, I think for us, it was so hard to narrow it down to what we narrowed it down to because there's so much more we could have included and we will include. I have no doubt about it. But, I think for a teacher to receive the information that we're about to give them with this training and to really have tools at their fingertips to be able to create a successful classroom rather than what teachers are doing now, which is constantly putting out fires, calling home because the students are not, behaving or, asking for the extra support or, whatever it looks like. There's a lot of putting out fires. There's a lot of what we call in our field reactive
yes,
intervention, and we want to give them the proactive piece. We want to give them the foundation. We want to set them up for success by giving them more tools, giving them more strategies, having them understand the landscape in their classroom. Because, when you have 20 kids in your classroom, you have 20 families in your classroom. You have 20 sets of development and developmental milestones. You have 20, very complex brain maps. And to think about it on those levels, is really to understand why educators are struggling these days, because it's so much more complex.
Yeah, there was a recent training for educators, and they said that in the last few years, there's been more burnout in this field than ever before. And it's not shocking.
No, makes sense.
Yeah. And when we're in schools consulting, when we're in schools supporting, you realize this isn't a classroom problem. This is okay. This isn't working as a system. We need to provide information. We need to provide a different lens and tools, and not just reactive ones, as you're talking about. And I always say, even in ABA, like, your proactive tools is what you should be focusing on.
It's everything.
Yes. Reactivity should be only if only if all those things didn't work.
Right.
Then we have our toolbox for what we do after.
Right. So we're on the proactive end, you and I, with this program, and it is such a great program. I think we've really looked at the needs.
Yeah.
And what's missing, like the most important elements of what's missing.
Yes. And I think one of the things that sets it apart is that it's not a one-off.
Right.
It's not a drop-in.
Yes.
It's a program.
Yeah. And a process.
Yes. That builds on each other. Mm-hmm. And you get two professionals who've been through it with you to really support your entire system, as opposed to dropping in, which I've done many drop-ins.
Right.
And they're wonderful, but they're not always effective.
But information is available right now at our fingertips, right? These educators can be assigned various wonderful webinars online and, other trainings. That's not what it's about.
No.
I think the fact that we're going to spend 6 months or a year with each school that we're working with is amazing, because we get to take these teachers through a transformation. We get to witness their process. We get to hold their hands. We get to understand their areas of weakness and how they think and why they're struggling. And we get to tailor the things that we're saying to them in their classrooms, the age groups that they're teaching, and their worldviews.
Beautiful. I'm so excited about that. I also want to talk about, you have a really special project that you have, a program that you have for executive function. And I know that executive functioning is something that's being talked about a lot more. I don't know that anyone knows the full definition of executive function, everything that it does, because I think it's quite complex. I think it's been very much simplified for everyone else to kind of understand in basic terms. But can you tell us a little bit about executive function and how you work with people on their executive function? Because, I could probably use it. And I probably could have really used you in high school and definitely throughout university. I think it would have been incredibly impactful for me. But tell us a little bit about your program.
So this is Focus Forward. It is an executive function coaching program, and it's a 10-week program. And we start out with an assessment of the individual's executive function skills and weaknesses. And so we understand exactly where they're struggling, because whether you have a diagnosis of ADHD or even symptoms of ADHD, a lot of us are struggling with executive function because our world is busy and fast.
And stimulating.
Stimulating and sometimes chaotic. Yeah. And it is very hard to function in this speed and, at this, chaotic pace. Yeah. And so we've managed to adapt this topic, this skill, this set of skills called executive functioning skills to all the different ages, ranging from young elementary school students all the way up to adulthood. Whether you're in school or not, right? It could be you're struggling in the workplace. It could be you're just struggling in your own personal life to keep track of everything. And we know that executive functioning is something that can be taught, and it's an area of the brain that can be strengthened. So this is kind of the control center of our brain, and it resides in the prefrontal cortex, the frontal, most modern, most newly developed area of our brain. And so we know that that is just a matter of creating skills and literally creating neural connections, just in increasing the connectivity over there in that area of the brain through teaching these skills and through creating this practice and then generalizing that practice to real life. And that's what we've done. So the 10-week model is individually tailored based on that initial assessment and, depending on what you're struggling with and what that looks like and what you're doing in your life, if you're a student, if you're not, if the expectation, is a weekly spelling test and multiplication table, or the expectation is law school and medical school,
Right.
and understanding that the skills are all the same. It's just kind of how you apply them
Right.
and the different strategies that could be used at different ages. So just watching how many people have been struggling with this is really what gave me the idea and the desire to create this program. And I'm very excited about it because I think it'll make a really big difference.
Well, I can tell you that if not all of my clients, most of my clients struggle with executive function.
Yes.
Many people I know personally who are not clients, who are just people that I know in my life, struggle with executive function. And I know that, when I go in and I speak to teachers or to families, I talk about how this part of the brain, especially in children, is very underdeveloped. Like they're not expected to have these skills yet. These are things we need to teach them.
Yes.
And I think one of the most important lessons is that teaching requires repetition. And if you want that pathway to get stronger and stronger, it needs to be repeated over and over again. And so learning things like organization, prioritizing, self-regulation, co-regulation, all those things live in that area.
Absolutely.
And they are essential to the way we function every single day of our lives.
They're more than essential. Honestly, they're more important than many things that kids are learning, because what we know from the research is that this area called soft skills, which includes communication skills and executive functioning skills and relationship skills and emotional regulation and all that, that is more important to human success, to adult success, than cognitive intelligence.
It's true.
And academic achievement. It is more important. If you can do this stuff, you have much more of a chance to be a successful and happy adult than if you are brilliant, but your soft skills are lacking.
So true. That's a really powerful statement. And I could not agree more. And I think that there's an element also of you can be brilliant, but if you don't believe in yourself, or you have all the skills, but you walk into a room and then you freeze, they all go away for a moment, if not for longer.
Right.
And so having the ability to regulate yourself, having the ability to talk to yourself, having the ability to believe in yourself is a whole other ball game.
Yeah.
I always talk about how it's one thing to give, tools. I want to instill the confidence to be able to use those tools without my existence.
Right.
That's really what it is. It's I can give you the tools, but then I want you to have the confidence to go out there and use them.
Yes. Yes. And to believe that like you have something to offer vis-a-vis these skills.
Yeah. I think if you can give kids anything, It's to give them power within themselves to know that they can. Because the truth is that if you believe in yourself, you'll figure it out. If you learn that everything is figure outable,
Yes.
you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Especially today with
Mhm.
AI and with technology and with
Right.
everything that's available, you can figure it out.
Yeah. But see, there we go. Information at our fingertips.
Yeah.
It's not just about the information. It is also about the process of getting there. It is also about developing these other aspects of ourselves that are not Googleable.
It's so true.
And Chat GPT cannot help with.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm totally with you. It's such an interesting time that we're in as parents and as clinicians.
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting time. And it's a very powerful time. It is a
Yes.
time to really step into a power because we've been able to take the information and create real meaning out of it. We've been able to trial and error many things and figure out, oh, this is what's really needed.
Yes.
We've been able to walk through many systems and support several systems to understand, oh, this is what we all need right now, or this is what this system would need, and this is what that system would need, and be able to take all the pieces of information that float in the air and just pull what's really most important and impactful for different systems. I think it's a really powerful time.
It is. It's totally a time of transformation. And we're super lucky to have so much information at our fingertips. But I think that one of the things that's really lacking right now in humanity and in our society is relationships. Like the
Yes.
more information we get, the worse we get at relationships
It's true.
with self and other.
Yeah, I agree.
And so that's really why I love doing what I'm doing. I can't ever imagine doing anything else. Because I think this is where humanity is kind of struggling right now.
Yeah. Do you encourage your clients to practice mindfulness? Do you encourage them to do that?
Always.
Mhm.
And also, I know that some people won't.
Mhm.
And so, just like everything else, you have to adapt the intervention to the
Yeah.
person who's in front of you, and you have to give them a toolbox that they'll want to reach for. So, if I'm trying to get fit and somebody tells me to go do burpees, I'm going to run like hell.
Same.
But if they tell me to take Pilates every day, I'm super happy to do that. That's basically my life right now. So you have to know like your audience, and you have to know what people will reach for and what people will realistically integrate into their lives versus just show up with you, listen to, what you have to say and in one ear and out the other. That is not what I'm here to do.
Same.
I'm not here to talk at people at all.
Absolutely. And I'm a huge advocate for mindfulness and breath work,
Yes.
depending on the individual and how mindfulness can be implemented in your life. And in all my trainings, I start with a mindful moment where I have everyone experience the difference that they feel in just a few moments of being very present,
Yeah.
just focusing on your breath, and how I think it's such an important tool. We were never taught as
Yes.
kids that I think every single child should learn.
Yes. Every single child and every single adult.
Agreed.
It's something that I practice personally. It's something that I teach my kids. So I'm a huge believer. And also, I think sometimes it takes a while to build the trust, that for people to really think this is a tool that's going to help them and reach for it and trust
use it.
and trust that it's not just for monks. This is what I tell people when I introduce mindfulness in my sessions. I say, I know that you might think it's a little out there, but meditation is not, just, you don't have to be kind of in a silent retreat or, a monk in order to implement these things. They're super powerful. And speaking about brain health, like There is so much research out there, not just about executive functioning and emotional regulation, but just about the overall effectiveness of mindfulness in all sorts of brain functions, in all sorts of, physiological functions. So
Absolutely.
it's gold.
Totally agree. Before we finish, I want to ask you if you have a thought or a question to leave our listeners with, something you want to have them sit with, or even a quote or something that's meaningful for you.
On my website, it says, "This is not a dress rehearsal for life. This is life. You get one chance at it, and find a way to live it, like really live it in a way that makes you proud, in a way that makes you think about taking your last breath and being really content with what came before that, the relationships that came before that, your choices." I think we're just in this chaotic pace of life, and we don't think about the fact that time is passing and we get one chance at this.
Yeah.
So I think more of us need to be thinking about that.
I agree. I think sometimes life has a way of shaking you into thinking that way. But if we really sat in that more often.
Right. What if it didn't shake us? What if we didn't need to be
shaken into it?
Right.
Really grounded into wow.
Yes.
It's so true.
Living intentionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even in our parenting, but even with ourselves, just the way that we show up every day for ourselves and for those around us.
And if you don't like how it looks, you can change it. It's all changeable. All relationships can be rewired. All habits can be relearned.
So true. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so, so much, Dr. Sharon Arbel, for being here with us. You are absolutely phenomenal.
I've really enjoyed this time. Thank you for having me. And I'm so excited about working with you. I'm so excited about this project.
Me too.
I'm so excited about the ripple effects that I know it will have.
Me too. Me too. Thank you.